Welcome to Voices of the Valley, a captivating podcast series that brings together some of the brightest minds in the agriculture industry. Straight from the field to your living room, we explore the challenges, innovation, and triumphs in modern-day farming and provide insight for consumers who are curious about where their food comes from.
Hello everyone, my name is Taylor Lawson. I am the Communications Manager with Western Growers.
And I'm Michelle Rivera, Senior Communication Manager with Western Growers.
I am Elizabeth Talley, and I'm the Sales and Marketing Manager for Talley Vineyards.
And I'm Grant Talley, and I work for Talley Farms.
Grant and Elizabeth Talley are fourth-generation farmers, continuing a legacy that began in 1948 when their great-grandfather, Oliver Talley, first planted vegetables in the Arroyo Grande Valley on California's Central Coast. Can you tell me about a moment that you realized that you wanted to follow in your family's footsteps and continue on that legacy?
Watching my dad as I was growing up, he was one of the few people that I saw that just loved his job. And I feel like everyone else as parents kind of were just like, oh, it's this thing that they do and, to get by. Whereas my dad loved going to work in the morning, and I just thought that was amazing and something that I would want to do. And I kind of worked my way up and tried different things. I worked for Disney for a while. I worked for bigger wineries. And yeah, I just loved the aspect of ours that is small, it's family owned, and we're handcrafting this product that is just celebrating the land. And I love it.
It's interesting that you left and then ended up coming back and, finding your own way into the business.
Yeah, our family on the farming side and the winery side has a very strict rule that everyone I tell about, they're like, wow, that's actually amazing. We all have to work at least 2 years somewhere else before we can apply to come back to the family business. So there's nothing handed to us at Talley. They want us to work for it, and they want us to want to do it. And yeah, I think that's really special.
I would say at a young age, growing up, we would always come to the farm. We had a little area. It was Elizabeth's aunt. It was named after Elizabeth's aunt. It's called Marian's Park. And we would fish and we would hang out. So we just spent a lot of our lives out here. And I always loved it. But I'd probably say once I got my license and I could start driving around, I would start going out to the ranch a lot more. I'd be hunting, and I just really enjoyed being out in nature. And so I would say that kind of sparked it. And then something else that's sort of family tradition is when you turn 12, you start working at the farm during the summers. And so that would be for your clothes, if you want to buy clothes or different things like this and that. It kind of gives you a sense of responsibility. And, you tell some people that and they're kind of like, oh my gosh, that's cruel. You're so young, and you are so young, but it's also kind of like, okay, this is the real world. This is how responsibility works. And so every summer after 6th grade, I would be out here. And so I kind of felt like it was sort of instilled in us, not forcefully, but just always being out here. And we just live in an absolutely beautiful area too. So it doesn't make it too hard to come back to work for the family.
Yeah, no, I love all these family traditions and the 2-year rule, and you start working at 12. I feel like I talk to a lot of 2nd, 3rd, and 4th generation farmers, and many of them say that they have left the business only to return. And it's really interesting to me that the majority of them always come back. Was there ever a time that you thought about doing something else and just staying doing something else and not returning to agriculture? I'll start with you, Elizabeth.
I don't think I ever thought that I would never come back. I did live in Europe for a year and tried to extend my visa and was denied. So I had to come back forcefully to California.
Sounds like fate to me.
Yeah. Which, it's not a bad place to come back to. Obviously, I love it here and knew I always wanted to come back. I would have liked to have had a little bit longer, but it worked out the way it was supposed to.
Yeah, so with the whole 2-year deal after college where you have to go work for somebody else, my brother was living in LA, and I thought, well, maybe I'll move to LA too. It'll be something totally different. It's only, 2.5, 3 hours south of us. So I always kind of liked Western clothing and stuff like that. So I was like, I kind of want to learn about that. And so I moved down there with my brother. We lived in Hollywood, and I was doing that. And I was like, if this is something that really sparks my interest, then maybe I could stick with it. But after the 2 years, I got a call from my dad, and he was like, hey, there's this position opening up. I think you should take it if you'd really like to. And at that point, I was kind of over that whole lifestyle down there and working in the fashion industry and whatnot. And so I was like, yep, I'll take it. And so I ended up coming on back.
And now this is one of my favorite questions to ask our podcast guests. For those who have never stepped onto a farm, what would surprise them the most about what you do?
I think, and especially living in LA, I really got to understand how probably most of the population, or at least people in cities, kind of view farming and whatnot. Generally I would tell them, I come from a farming background, and a lot of them would think I'm from the Midwest. They naturally think farmer, red barn, couple sheep, couple pigs, some corn growing, and so
Pitchforks, plaid shirts.
yeah, exactly, yeah. Like, all right. And so, like Old MacDonald, I guess everybody read
Right.
that book, so everybody thinks that's what it is. And I'm like, no. And we're like, you could see the ocean from our ranch. We're not too far from it. And so I think there's a disconnect with that. I think that if they've never stepped foot onto a farm, I think that they would be shocked in how many people play a part and how much work goes into the food that they get at the grocery store. I mean, it's so easy to walk around with your cart, kind of pick what you want, and it's all the best looking produce and whatnot. And so I think people would be shocked. Like right now, it's sort of peak strawberry season, and we've got about 300 people just harvesting right now. And, we're probably medium-sized farm here in California, and there's a lot bigger guys, but there's a lot of hand picking that goes on for a majority of crops still nowadays, at least fresh produce. And so I think that would be the thing that shocks them, is how many people are needed and how many things are still hand cut and hand picked nowadays.
Yeah, it really takes a village. And you're right. Before I started working for Western growers, I would just go to the grocery store and just pick my produce and, check out and go on about my day. But now I just have such a deeper appreciation for when I go into the produce section and pick out my food.
I think agriculture gets blamed for a lot of things that kind of happen. I think it's easy to point fingers. If something goes wrong, it's like, oh, well, it must be the farm. And I don't think that, every farm across the country is doing things correctly, but people like us and farms like us, we've been caring for the land that we have for almost 80 years. And we want to continue doing that for the next generation. So we're trying to make it better and trying to sustain it and ourselves for the next generation. So we really do care for the land and try and make it better.
And I mean, you guys are fourth generation, which is crazy. I think Elizabeth, you told me, what was the statistic?
What I saw was that less than 4% of businesses survive to the fourth generation.
That is so incredible. So you guys are in such a unique position. So with this legacy in mind, do you feel pressure to maintain the tradition of the past, or do you feel free to innovate?
Yeah, I think you need to keep some aspects of tradition. I think that's the right thing to do, but if you're not changing with the times, then you're going to die. And we've seen that a lot with smaller farms that didn't want to adapt to new technologies or new ideas or grow new items. A lot of people get caught with, well, I've always grown this, we've been growing this for 50 years, and we don't want to change. If you look at farming as a whole, at least along kind of the coast of California or in California, there's different trends that are happening. You'll talk to guys that used to grow sugar beets, and now that's a dead industry. And then you started, getting broccoli, and then now that's kind of turned more into strawberries and raspberries and blackberries, and that's a really big deal now here on the coast. And so We partnered up with somebody to start doing strawberries. And so we're trying to keep tradition, but also just making sure that we adapt with the times.
So I just wanted to jump in because from what I've seen, you don't have to look far to see that there are a lot of misconceptions about farming and farmers and how our food's grown. And one of the things that I would love to ask you guys is what's the one thing you wish people knew about farming and ag?
I would probably say that there's a lot more behind the scenes going on and a lot more things that farmers have to deal with. For instance, we just had a price hike on gas hit July 1st, and those sort of things affect us because we're very heavy on vehicles and fuel for tractors, big trucks, pickup trucks, different implements and whatnot. And so those things affect us, and there's just a lot of rising costs here and there. And so I think a lot of people think, farming, it's just sort of like a glamorous thing, and it is beautiful and it is nice, but there's a lot of different costs that go into it. And so, I read that I think 24,000 farms and ranches disappeared in 2024, and we lost 2.1 million acres last year as well. And so it's getting tougher and tougher to stay in this business of farming. And so I think that's something that I want people to be aware of is with all these rising costs and all these different things, it's really hitting farmers, and the ones that are going to hurt the most are the smaller ones. And so I think if we want to keep these family farms around, we've got to see a change in those aspects.
I think, kind of going along with what Grant said, your dollar really matters, and where you spend it can have a big difference. So, supporting smaller family farms or wineries and just spending your dollar at a company that you believe in and you can get to know the person behind it.
Have either of you had someone tell you that visiting your farm or tasting your product changed the way that they think about food and wine, or a similar experience that it impacted them and they let you know?
I think that it generally comes down to the education, and we have a lot of tours out here, which is really great. There's a lot of kids, younger kids, and so they're able to see what it's like because that's something that we're very blessed to have. Elizabeth and I grew up, having this farm out here. So we got to learn how plants grew and how things worked out. And so having others come here and young kids and see how things are done, I think that's super important. So I don't know about like a huge change, but I think just that perspective of how things are actually kind of working in agriculture and how plants grow and how they're harvested. And so, yeah, I've gotten a lot of people that have said, hey, this was really awesome. It really helped me understand what's going on. And so that's generally kind of the response I hear.
Absolutely, especially for the younger generation going and learning how their food gets to the table. I remember going to farms as a child, and it's something that I still remember to this day. So I think the farm tours absolutely have a long-lasting impact for future generations. So very, very important. How about you, Elizabeth?
One thing that is super unique about our tasting room, which I encourage everyone to come visit, is that it is surrounded by our vegetable farm, and we have these beautiful windows so you can look out onto the field, and it's changing every few months. So every time you visit, it's a different view. But I remember having a guest one time look out and be like, "Oh, are those the grapes?" And I was like, that's a field of lettuce, actually." And, you
Oh,
have
wow.
lettuce in the grocery store.
Right.
So, and to me, it was like such a, like, what are you talking about? Like, no, like it was so obvious, but not to everyone. So the fact that we are able to give people that kind of view of a working farm, while they have a nice glass of wine, I think that's super special. And just getting to educate people a little bit who weren't necessarily out there looking for that kind of farm tour on that day, they're getting it no matter what.
Absolutely. And I feel like when you see things in the grocery store, that isn't necessarily how they look in the field. So it really is a totally different experience seeing it, fresh growing in the ground and then it all nice and cleaned and ready to go in the grocery store.
As Elizabeth said, we are a working farm. I literally got a text from her dad on Monday, and it was like, hey, we had some people tasting outside and they got dusted by one of our guys. And so I'm like, okay, well, we need to,
Oh, no.
I'll make sure I'll tell our guys we need to go a lot slower around the tasting.
That's funny. I
Perfect.
mean, it is. It's like
It's
it's
a working
a
farm,
working
yeah.
farm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And we had people, I guess, this weekend that were family friendly, which is great, but kids tend to stray a little further, and there were some kids that started straying further and further and then got into the bell pepper field. You're like, no, like this isn't a garden, like this is a working farm. And luckily it was on a Sunday and there wasn't anybody there and we were able to get them out pretty quickly. But yeah, it's a working farm.
And it's funny, like Elizabeth said, the tasting room windows, they literally are facing. So I'll sometimes get, a text or something from somebody else, be like, hey, I saw you. And I'll be like, oh, where'd you see me? And it was like, oh, I saw you out in the field. I was wine tasting and I was watching you, checking the plants and, feeling for the soil for when to water and fertilize or when to cultivate. And so it's kind of funny, but yeah, you're fully immersed out there.
Yeah, that's hilarious. That's just such a unique story. You'll never hear that from anyone else saying that you're being watched on a job while people are tasting wine.
Yeah, yeah, exactly.
Very cool. Now, how do each of you see your roles evolving as the next generation steps in or as the industry evolves also?
So I see, I work pretty closely with my dad, and he's still very young. So I think it's just going to be working together. I also work with my brother, my two brothers as well. And so I'm on production. My other brother, he is on kind of like repairs and in charge of the permanent crops. And then my other brother is in sales. So we kind of have like this little trifecta deal going on. So I think with the new generation, it's nice to have each of us in these different areas, and especially with sales, because there's always sort of people in farming, there's always sort of a disconnect that can happen between production and sales. Sales gets a little frustrated with production gets a little frustrated with sales. So it's nice being able to have your brother there, and we have a great relationship, and we're able to cut through, and we have the owner's kind of, hat on, so to speak, to where, hey, what's best for the farm as a whole? And so, whereas if you've got an employee, they might have a slightly different view. And so I think that's kind of going to be a great thing for us. I started my grass-fed beef business, and it was something that from a young age, I always wanted to get into the cattle business. And we have a ranch out here, but no Talley family members were running cattle. And so I'm huge on health, and something that really sparked my interest was, okay, I can combine health with me wanting to run cattle for as long as I can remember. And so it kind of meshed together, and I started Grant's Grass-Fed. And so I'm able to supply people with grass-fed ground beef as of now. Later on, I'll get into steaks. But I just think it's a great complement to our family and what we've done. So now we're in the beef business, we're in the farming business, and the wine business. It's kind of I know I already said trifecta. We'll say Trinity. It's like the Trinity. So it's really cool.
I love it.
I'm really excited, and I think it's just a nice little addition to what we already have going on.
Yeah, that's great. And as I say, cattle, a whole different beast, so to speak.
Oh yeah, totally
See what
different
I did there?
ballgame. It has been, yeah, yeah. It's been quite a learning experience. Most people, they get into cattle, they learn that. I had to learn the cattle side and the butchering and the selling side, and so, but it's been great, and I'm off to a good start, and I'm excited to see where this leads. So you could find me on Instagram at Grant's Grassfed. My website is also www.grantsgrassfed.com. in there, and I sell subscription boxes, or if you just want to buy one box at a time, then you can do that as well. And then
And sorry, Grant, is that for a US or is that just for California?
that's just for California.
Okay.
So with shipping beef and whatnot, you've got to keep it obviously cold, and they recommend dry ice, and so dry ice can't go on planes. So I can't be doing next day, air or anything like that. So as of now, I'm just in California. Hopefully I'll be able to do Arizona, Nevada, Oregon next and go from there. And then for Talley Farms, you can go to www.talleyfarms.com. And we have a program, it's called Talley Farms Fresh Harvest. And so there you can learn about our CSA that we have, which is Community Supported Ag. And that's where we grow a lot of various items here at the farm. And then we'll also pull from local farms as well. And we create this great fruit and vegetable box. And then we ship that all over the state. I think we also do the neighboring states as well. And that's just been a phenomenal program for our local community and allowing people to see what is available here. Growing up, a lot of people were like, hey, where can we find your produce, where we can do this? And it was like, I don't know, we're selling to these grocery stores. But now we're able to show people, hey, this is our stuff. And not only is it our stuff, but it's stuff from Santa Maria and kind of our neighbors. And so that's been an awesome program as well that you can look into. And we also have an Instagram.
Yeah, you can go to talleyvineyards.com to learn more about Talley Vineyards. Come visit us. We're open 7 days a week and have a beautiful tasting room. You might get dusted on the way in, but it's great.
But it makes the authentic experience, right?
Yes, exactly.
It gets your mouth dry, and so you got to drink some wine. It's kind of it's a tactic.
Yeah.
And you're on social media too, right?
Yes, very active on Instagram, TikTok, and Facebook. And you can also text us from our website, and you can order wine over text message, which is great. And we're distributed in about 30 states and a few countries outside of the US.
Awesome. Thank you guys so much for your time. I thoroughly enjoyed hearing about everything that you're doing at Talley Vineyards and Farms. I've been to both and they're just absolutely stunning.
Yeah, thank you for having us.
Thank you so much. Yeah, and support California agriculture.
That's right.
Thanks for tuning in to Voices of the Valley, a Western Growers production. As always, we'd like to give a special shout out to our guest for joining us. Don't forget to like and subscribe to catch our future episodes, and we invite you to follow us on social media to continue the conversation.